From the
I don't know what to say. I'm just speechless.
To the
I can't believe it.
we see all sorts of life-changing moments at McKinney Competitions. How would you react? Cars, houses, tech bundles and more from just £2 a ticket. No purchase necessary. For competitions, rules and conditions, see mckinneycompetitions.com.
We lost a Christmas party lunchtime today. There was 30 people. It was a local man who would have took out to all the staff, and he cancelled just because he didn't want to risk anyone getting COVID. And then we have a nice date for Christmas. And then we had a group of teachers who were booked in this evening from a local secondary school, and they had to cancel as well. So we have been hit hard by the cancellations this weekend. Although we're being allowed to trade, but we're not trading as normal. So, I mean, if you look at a normal day's sales, we do probably 80% of our sales in the evening time with people coming in for dinners. Lunch is only really a quick bite, or it's not the same. And if we are going into sort of more restricted service, then it is going to impact even more businesses. I know now someone during the week there, their phone died, and the only form of identification they had was the app, which had their face and the QR code. So I had to let them charge the phone and then prove it was them. We are complying by the rules and we are doing our best, but it is a bit frustrating whenever other sectors and other industries aren't as heavily restricted as we are, and that sort of puts a lot more stress on us to manage it rather than it just being the norm. Like you can go into a church and there's very little restrictions, whereas to come into a hospitality venue, there's a lot more onus on us.
Caorlan McAllister and Gavin Bates were in the news in Armagh I back in August 2020 when they took over the halfway house in Banbridge after it had been forced to close due to the pandemic. Restaurants are back in the news again in recent days since the regulations have tightened again with the new threat. People are cancelling their bookings, and with the numbers rising rapidly, it looks like things could get even worse before or after Christmas. This is your host Elaine Ingram. That was the voice of Caorlan when I caught up with him at the halfway house, and he gave us his thoughts on the situation. Hi Caorlan, here we are again. It feels like deja vu around here, although I have to say I'm here in the halfway house, and I came in and it's definitely really festive feel about it, and there seems to be plenty of people out enjoying their meals. But as we all know, everything that's going on in the news right now, everything seems to be completely up in the air again. And since the vaccine passports and everything came in, there's been news about cancellations and all sorts of stuff like that, and problems with people not having their vaccine passports with them, or different things that are going on. How have you been finding things in terms of cancellations? First, how have you been finding that?
We have had quite a few cancellations. The first few weeks in December seen quite a few, with a lot of people then being hesitant about going out around the festive period and about coming out with their COVID passports and stuff. And then once the 13th of December came along, there was a lot more cancellations because people just didn't have their passports ready or hadn't been vaccinated and just weren't sort of buying into it. But overall, everyone who's come in, they have responded well. They've received well the restrictions that we've had to enforce, and there's been no real backlash yet. We did have a few tables this week who weren't prepared and had nothing organised, so we couldn't serve them because they didn't have any negative tests or exemption certificates, or so they weren't prepared. So we lost that trade, but there has been quite a significant drop in trade this week because I think with people being a bit more cautious now with the Omicron variant now spreading so quickly, and people are nervous about getting COVID because after obviously the 15th of December, if they have COVID, they would then have to isolate over Christmas.
Yeah, I suppose that is a real concern for people, yeah. And then I suppose it didn't help last night when the BMA came out and said, basically said, I wouldn't stand in a queue. I wouldn't be, anywhere where there are people. Everybody should just stay at home. And I mean, I know. Obviously, the concern is for everybody's health, but it seems that there's an awful lot of confusion out there coming from the government. I mean, it's not. I understand like that this has all just come upon us all very quickly, but surely this was coming down the tracks, and there should have been maybe more preparation. Do you think?
No, I do agree with you. There has been such a mixed message, so it has been quite confusing for people, and even for us as a venue. We're trying to keep up to date with all the restrictions and the changes of decisions, and we have to be quite reactive rather than be ahead of it. We have to just sort of follow suit everyone else.
Yeah, and how difficult is that? I mean, it must be really, really hard for you. The measures that you have to put in place in the first place. I mean, I see. Obviously, I came in here now, and I'm asked for my. Do you have to have the actual vaccine passport, or are the cards good enough at the moment? Because everybody doesn't have the thing downloaded and that.
Well, yeah, there's multiple ways of which you can, which is your COVID passport, as I say. So, if you have a negative lateral flow test, which is authorised by the NHS tech service, that's valid. Also, a positive COVID test within the last 180 days, but not within the last 15 days, that's also valid. The wee blue card, the vaccination card.
Does it have to be a PCR test, or can it be?
You can have a PCR test as well.
Does a lateral flow? The antigen test that you do at home, are they acceptable?
Yes, they are, but not the actual. Don't bring the actual test with you. But
the email from the.
If you register that test with the NHS website, then you get a certificate sent to you that it is negative as of.
Or would an email do from the NHS saying?
Yeah, as long as it's from the official website, and then obviously you need photographic ID to prove that you're that person.
Yeah, that's probably been an issue with people forgetting their IDs.
Well, yeah, because you have to bring quite a few things. Or I know now someone during the week their phone died, and the only form of identification they had was the app, so which had their face and the QR code. So I had to let them charge the phone and then prove it was them. But it's just a bit awkward at times because it's not normal activity for coming into a restaurant, but we're trying to do our best to sort of make people feel welcome, but also be patient with them, because it is like some elderly people maybe are not as good with phones as others, and maybe some people forgot their wallet, and all their stuff's in it. It's just like it's just one of those things you have to endure. And
your staff, I mean, for your staff, they're busy enough as it is. Has half their job become administrative now, and standing at doors and checking all these things? Have you got to retrain your staff basically in all the things that they have to do?
Yeah, well, thankfully now we haven't had any conflict from any customers yet, so it's all been very peaceful and very cooperative. But yeah, the staff have sort of had to take an additional role and be COVID marshals almost, and check with people, but also then reassure people that they're in a safe environment, and we can space them out, and it's just one of those things. It's just more work, and we're probably losing a bit of trade because of it, so it's not ideal.
Yeah, do you feel like now with cancellations and stuff, I know you said you haven't had that much, do you think that maybe this week it will drop again? I mean, you must have a lot of Christmas parties and things like that planned coming up that have been booked.
We lost a Christmas party lunchtime today. There was 30 people. It was a local man who would have took out to all the staff, and he cancelled just because he didn't want to risk anyone getting COVID, and then they have an isolate for Christmas. And then we had a group of teachers who were booked in this evening from a local secondary school, and they had to cancel as well. So we have been hit hard by the cancellations this weekend, but in saying that, now we have picked up a couple of tables, which is good, because those bigger parties might not be good as one unit, but then maybe the smaller teams are deciding to go out. But no, we have had cancellations, and even notably with today being the last Friday before Christmas, it's sort of it's normally a lot busier than it is now.
Yeah, that'd be traditional time for people to go out.
Yeah.
But for a restaurant as well, there's one thing, people cancelling parties, that are in bars or anything like that. But for a restaurant, you've all that food ordered. I mean, I know you said you were able to salvage it with smaller parties this time, but for some places and on other occasions, you have food bought in. Knowing how many customers you're going to have, how many tables you're going to have for a specific weekend or a day or whatever, and then what happens to all that food that's been ordered in? It's not going to last, is it? Or?
Well, we bought a lot of our food and planned ahead in November, so we had sort of forecasted our figures and forecasted our numbers, and we looked at the bookings, but it has back then there was no chat or no evolution of Omicron, but whereas now this has just sort of been sprung upon us, and we just have to react as best we can. Now we haven't ordered as much now for this week, but we do have quite a bit of stock and holding, so we're salvaging what we can and using what we can so to minimise waste.
Yeah, because that must be one of the things. But as well as that, like your staff itself, it seems like with all of this stuff going on, it's, they're telling people to not go out, to stay at home and to work from home and everything else. But this industry, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't operate like that. Your staff must be under an awful lot of pressure coming up to Christmas, and they don't know what's going on. There's no furlough anymore. What do you envision happening in the coming weeks?
Well, a lot of our staff, who are part-time, are sort of relying on these Christmas hours coming in so they can have extra money for Christmas and for the holiday season. But whereas now, yesterday was a lot quieter than last Thursday, which isn't normal. Like, we should have been busier last night than we were previous week because it's getting closer to Christmas. But whereas I think with all what's in the media and in the news, it sort of is maybe putting people off. So we will have to look at the rotas and make sure that we're obviously staffed accordingly. And also hope that it may be busy enough that we need everyone.
Yeah, but what happens to those people? It's just too bad. I suppose there's nothing put in place at the moment. I know the government are under pressure to start bringing in some sort of measures to keep people above water. But there's nothing. We're all it's just a waiting game at this stage, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there is that worry amongst the staff, but thankfully we have been busy enough that everyone has still, no one's lost shifts or no one's lost jobs or anything yet. We've been ticking along rightly, so I can't complain. But it's just sort of disappointing that instead of us having maybe 150 in, we're maybe only getting 100. So although we're still busy, it's just not quite what it should be at Christmas. Yeah.
And yourself now here. You just taken over this business. I mean, in 2020. I'm sure you definitely weren't expecting this. It was yourself and your partner Gavin bought the businesses. It closed down during lockdown, the first lockdown, and you decided to take the leap. It's unusual for anyone to take on something such as this. At a time like that. I mean, what was the thinking behind that?
Well, when the first lockdown first came about back in March 2020, I was working in Titanic at the time, and then after a few months, I got made redundant. So I'd lost my job because of COVID, and my wife had lost her job. So we sort of didn't have much in line, and then the opportunity came up to look at the halfway house, and it's a great business, a great potential. And myself and Gavin looked at it and we thought, right, why don't we just try and give it a go and, put energy behind it. We weren't lucky because it took us 5 weeks in August to get open. And then in September we got 5 weeks of trade, and then we had to close down. That was for the second lockdown. And then we reopened again for just over 2 weeks in the run up to Christmas. Now back then there was restrictions where there was no casual drinking, and you can only have a drink if you were eating. But there was quite an appetite for people to come out in the run up to Christmas last year, and then unfortunately we closed on Christmas Eve.
Well, the difference between last year and this year was that we knew that we were going to be open for a while, and everybody knew that it was going to be a short window of getting out and enjoying ourselves, because we were expecting to be locked down again. But this time, this is very different.
Yeah, it is very different because there's a lot of uncertainty now. And it was quite clear last year that we were getting a short spell, and so we all put a lot of energy and effort into making what we could when we could, and which was good. But then come Christmas Eve last year, we closed down for the big lockdown, but then we didn't anticipate it being so long. It was just over 5 months, so it was quite a spell for a business to be closed. Now, we did do takeaways, but we made that decision in order to pay some of the staff. We didn't want to have the business closed completely and shut the doors. We also wanted to service the local community and offer that service to them, because I know a lot of people in rural areas, maybe a bit lonely and would not see their neighbours as often as what city folk would. So offering that service was good, and it got us to know the locals a lot more.
And know your customers and bring in more customers for when you did reopen.
Well, we kept our social media active and we kept pushing things out there. We even offered deliveries, and that was just the staff themselves, who would drive the food out to people. And it was good to interact with people and see people, because back then, we were all in lockdown,
and you were introducing yourselves as the new business owners as well. So I suppose it was, right, know what I mean. It was probably a good thing all around that you were getting that involvement with the community during that time. So I suppose in some ways it was a good thing in some ways. Did you keep up the delivery services at all, or is that all?
No, we kept going right the way through until early May, but just before we reopened again, which is the spell we're open for now. So we kept it going. It was good.
Get ready to shake up summer with the Get Active ABC Sunshine Fill programme for kids and families. Get set for land-based adventure at our summer schemes, or why not get adventurous and maybe get wet at our Splashtastic Water Sports Summer programme. There are so many things to do, and all we need is you. See getactiveabc.com/summer for all the details.
And how difficult was it? What sort of measures did you have to put in? It must be expensive to put all the things that you have to put in place with all the restrictions that have been brought in for a restaurant. Is it an expensive venture?
Well, yeah, it is, because we had to reduce our numbers. So we had to take out tables and chairs and space people out.
A lot of restaurants now found that they ended up shutting down for that very reason, that they just couldn't sustain.
Yeah.
They just couldn't sustain it as a business. Their places as businesses with only half open. But you didn't have that problem here because it's quite large here anyway. Yeah,
we're very lucky here in the Halfway that we do have the space. We converted our function room into an additional part of the restaurant. So instead of seating 90 people in the restaurant, side by side, we spread it out across the whole venue. So it also opened up the venue for another possible revenue stream. For people to come and see the function room as another destination venue rather than sitting in the restaurant. Yeah.
And what about they brought in the voucher scheme then as well? Did you find that beneficial to you at all, or do you think people were going out spending in the shops, or were there a lot of people using it for restaurants?
Yeah, I was surprised how many people used it. It was a lot of the locals who were supporting us. It almost was a way of them returning the favour for us, supporting them with the takeaways and stuff. And we offered up a 20% voucher back if they spent the £100 here. So that then we give them a £20 voucher for them to use anytime within the next year, just as a way of saying thank you.
It's amazing the way people were very innovative with things like that. Like businesses, I found they really have to be on the ball, coming up with things like that, ideas like that, where you see if you spend it here, we'll throw in something like that to encourage people. But that must be the business man in you, or I suppose that's what it takes to be a business person. Okay. I would never have thought of something like that.
I know, it's always good just to come up with different scenarios and PR stunts that we can push on social media and try and set ourselves aside from the competition. Yeah. How important is social media in your business now these days? Well, it's major part in the business, because nowadays everyone has social media, and social media is on everyone's phones, which is in their hands, so it's quite instantaneous, publicity. If you do put a post up and you ask for engagement, you can get it pretty quickly in people's hands, rather than the old school methods of flyers and advertising in papers and stuff. Yeah. And what do you think is going to happen? If we do go back into lockdown again, do you see, not just your own restaurant, but for the hospitality industry in general, do you think that this is going to be a disaster? In terms of there's going to be a lot of businesses that just won't be able to take it anymore? Yeah, I would say that. I say there's a lot of businesses that maybe who are hoping for a strong Christmas to carry them through the winter months, maybe might not have as strong a Christmas as what they hope. And also it's always the start-stopping of hospitality, which is hurting it, because then you're having to retrain staff, you're having to, get people back into work and into rhythm of service, and it's hard, because the last lockdown was a long spell of time, and it is hard for people to be sitting at home so long, and but I do think a lot of businesses are going to struggle. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's definitely going to be. We're going to have. It looks like we're not coming out of the woods, anytime soon by the looks of things. So it's going to have to be long term strategy. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, it is going to have to be a long term strategy, because we can't keep opening and reclosing every time there's a new variant, or every time there's additional restrictions or the numbers spike. We just have to do everything as a unit, rather than just slowly reacting to the increase in numbers. Yeah. Have you had any sort of feedback from your customers, or anything like that, about what they would like to, or what they're... A lot of customers are sort of hesitant now. They're a bit nervous, and you can see them as anxious now as what they were maybe this time last year, whenever we were only having a short spell service. But I think it's just with so much being in the news and publicised about the Omicron variant, and people are a bit nervous. And another thing I was just thinking there was, during last summer when they had the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, did you think that was a good thing, or
I don't know if it's just me, but I found that maybe it might have been better to have a eat in and to help out, and have the only way you could get the cheap deal was if you brought the food home, instead of, you see places that there were like takeaways putting tables in their venues so that they could, take advantage of it. I was thinking, this is just loads of people all gathered in the one place. Is it not like a bit counterproductive? I don't know, maybe it's just me. I thought that seemed a bit counterproductive. I know it was probably good for getting numbers in, but...
Well, I actually think it was a very good scheme, and particularly for the hospitality industry and also for customers, because it gave them an incentive to go out and to try new restaurants and try new venues and new establishments, because back then a lot of people were still nervous and sort of they got into maybe a rhythm of just eating at home and going to the big chain supermarkets rather than supporting local, and going to a local restaurant and the local pub, and it also was a great socialising element as well, because families who were like I myself, I have 4 children, and so lockdown was tough because you're at home all the time. There's only so much you can do, but whereas when they get out to help out, then it was an incentive for us to go out and try something to eat, and go somewhere new.
Yeah, I suppose it was outside too. It was the summertime, so people were outside. We were eating outside.
We actually missed the eat out to help out scheme here at halfway.
You weren't.
Yeah, we didn't avail of it. No, but
yeah.
If there's another one, I hope we can make the most of it.
Well, that's the difference now. Is if we're heading into we're in the thick of winter now as well, so we're back in the dark days. It doesn't help. And the other thing, in the south now, I know the news coming in today is, and it could have all changed by the time this podcast is brought out. But they're talking about this evening. They're talking about bringing in a 5:00 closures for theatre and restaurants and bars and everything, which it hasn't come in yet. This has just been recommended by NEFIT. But if that's, and I know like that's not up here, but what has happened before is there has been a tendency to try and have an All Ireland approach to things, and so potentially if that did happen in the Republic, then it could be something that could come in here. Now that to me would potentially be very, very, very difficult, because they're saying it basically is a lockdown without actually calling it a lockdown. So
I would agree with you there, because although we're being allowed to trade, but we're not trading as normal. So, I mean, if you look at a normal day's sales, we do probably 80% of our sales in the evening time when people coming out for dinners. Lunch is only really a quick bite, or it's not the same. And if we are going into sort of more restricted service, then it is going to impact even more businesses. Yeah,
I'd say there'll be an awful lot more closures, especially for it's one thing for restaurants where people do eat at night time, but bars, I mean, or even theatres or venues for people who are in the entertainment industry for gigs or anything like that. That's, that is going to be, if that does happen, I don't want to be a doomsayer, but if it does happen, I think it seems that a lot of this, are the government out of touch with the reality of people's lives? It's one thing to say people can work from home and stay at home and don't go out, but are they under some illusion? Are they not understanding that there's so many industries that have to be at work and need people and are working, really, really hard to follow all the guidelines and keep everybody, their staff and their customers, as safe as possible? That they're not being given the opportunity to just go along with what has been happening. And I think that businesses are trying their best, and they are doing their best and they're complying with the rules.
Yeah, well, like we are complying by the rules and we are doing our best, but it is a bit frustrating whenever other sectors and other industries aren't as heavily restricted as we are, and that sort of puts a lot more stress on us to manage it rather than it just being the norm. Like you can go into a church and there's very little restrictions, whereas to come in a hospitality venue, there's a lot more onus on us to police it. And
sporting events.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, like the big stadiums and stuff. And it is hard, but I think if they did restrict it to early closures and stuff, it is going to put a lot of people off not going out, and it is going to have a greater impact on the economy, because obviously hospitality feeds so many other industries. Taxi services, suppliers, farmers. There's so much more involved than just hospitality. It's a bigger picture.
Yeah, it is a bigger picture. I mean, it goes, as you say, it goes.
And for me, I've worked out nearly all my life in hospitality, so it's what I know. It's what I've, it's normal for me to work long hours and late nights and weekends. Whereas if everything's restricted, it's not normal service. It's unusual. So I think it's going to be tough on a lot of people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks very much for talking to me, Caorlan. And if hopefully things will just get better, not worse, and hopefully we'll get through this Christmas. And you won't have too many more cancellations or problems. And as I said, like when I came in here, the place is bustling. There are customers out there. You can hear them all laughing. The food smells delicious. It looks like, and it's really festive and Christmassy. So,
no, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, hopefully it stays like that.
Yeah, no, fingers crossed, and hopefully we get a good weekend and a good run next week.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Caorlan.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Since that was recorded on Friday afternoon, the Irish government didn't go quite as far as NPHET recommendations with the 5 o'clock closing, and they have come out and said that 8 p.m. will be the cut-off time. Maybe an All-Ireland approach will be taken, or maybe not. Who knows? But hopefully things won't come to that, and we can all enjoy a happy and safe Christmas. Remember to keep getting all of your news from Armagh I, and I hope you join us next time for our podcast.
From the
I don't know what to say. I'm just speechless.
to the,
I can't believe it.
we see all sorts of life-changing moments at McKinney Competitions. How would you react? Cars, houses, tech bundles and more from just £2 a ticket. No purchase necessary. For competitions, rules and conditions, see mckinneycompetitions.com.